For me, Vintage Story's hardest challenges aren't really survival focused. Sure, it's one of the most brutal and punishing survival sandboxes currently out there, but the hardest part is really surviving long enough to see the world change and evolve around you. With the release of the massive 1.22 update, my favorite hyperfixation suddenly feels like a brand new game filled with new mechanics and new ways to get me sucked in. So naturally, this required a brand new world, but instead of focusing on rushing progression or trying to build some gigantic megabase, I wanted to take things slowly. So if you enjoy the slower burn survival content and watching one deeply underqualified Seraph attempt to survive the wilderness, feel free to subscribe. The first thing my new hunter saw when it spawned in was a Category 5 hurricane, complete with winds so loud it was a wonder I didn't suffer permanent hearing loss in real life. Despite the world trying to sandblast me off the planet, day one still followed the sacred Vintage Story tradition of aggressively collecting everything that wasn't nailed to the ground. The local cattail population experienced complete ecological reconstruction, courtesy of my trusty knife, while my pockets filled rapidly with sticks, rocks, and food. Inside, I was embodying my best interpretation of a megacorporation, ensuring that I had everything I could ever imagine using. For this playthrough, I had one main goal that had me prepping like a doomsday theorist. I wanted to head south. Far, far south. I'd never experienced the warmer climates in this game before, where dense forest covered rich land. So, if I survived long enough, I wanted to experience all of the tropical regions the game had to offer. But that meant I couldn't afford to waste too much time in the early seasons. Winter in Vintage Story isn't really a season that you can just ignore, even if you don't live in deep cold climates. While I planned to get as far south as possible before making a base, I still needed a lot of resources, such as flax and leather, that were reliant on quick decisions and good planning, which, notoriously, I am terrible at, but we're working on it. As night was about to set on my first day, I found somewhere to finally stop. A welcoming trader, with a warm bed and a secure house. As darkness set, I was feeling relatively safe, so I sat beside the trader's home, using the nighttime to shape the first of my most important clay pottery, storage vessels to preserve food on the possibly long trip, and most importantly, tool molds. It was peaceful, quiet even, right up until the local dark dwellers decided that I'd become slightly too comfortable. A shiver first introduced me to the eldritch abominations, but before long I was turned into a discount pincushion by an unseen bow-torn firing squad. Safe to say, I abandoned my dignity very quickly once my health started shaking like a salsa dancer and sprinted into the safety of my newest best friend's home. The next morning, emboldened by my slight regeneration of health, I made the catastrophic mistake of gaining confidence in my limited skills. So I went looking for revenge. I took down one with ease, feeling proud of myself. Unfortunately, and unknown to me, the Eldritch Horrors had a very strong union mindset, meaning that what followed was less of a heroic takedown and more public execution. Vintage Story 1, Karma 0. This game has a very funny way of reminding you that confidence and competence are not always connected, and sometimes one should be happy with their lucky wins. Truly a good teaching moment for life. With my pottery completed and now on my back, I set off again, now collecting every shiny rock I passed. I wanted to ensure I had every tool for the journey south, so I spent the next day collecting 40 copper before temporarily sitting down and firing pottery. Finally, I felt like I was making good progress towards my goal. If I could start heading south within the next few days, I knew I'd have plenty of time to grow a good lot of crops and secure before winter. But of course, it's never that simple. See, remember when I said planning wasn't really something I was good at? Well, I must have been preoccupied with the butterflies, because in my infinite wisdom, I completely forgotten to make charcoal, which is important for smelting literally anything. So instead of progressing at a blistering pace, I was forced to spend another, almost excessive, day gathering food and supplies while trying not to think too hard about my own negative intelligence. Eventually though, preparations were finally finished. I'd mined enough copper to ensure that I had one of every tool, and the time for the charcoal firing had actually given me a sizable store of food for the journey, so I was set. Thankfully, I'd finally listened to more professional players and picked Hunter class for my new adventure, as apparently the other ones aren't as good. The movement speed meant that the distance was quickly disappearing beneath my feet. Valleys gave way to plains, to forests, and back to mountains. It honestly never fails to take my breath away, and with Farseer, it was all the more impressive to see these looming structures in the distant horizon. Ruins emerged constantly across the landscape, straining my already limited storage and truly testing my ability to resist temptation. Morally speaking, my soul would probably be judged pretty heavily from the amount of grave robbing I did, but realistically, what are they gonna do with it anyway? It's better lining my pockets than rusting away. I even found my first copper lantern and some torch holders, which blew my mind. I didn't even know you could get these as a resource. For a long while, nothing much changed, and it felt like I was barely making any distance, even as I was watching the numbers tick up. Eventually though, I found something that honestly should have been a warning just on appearance. Remember what I said about grave robbing and it weighing on my soul? Well, here was my retribution. A shiver. Normally, those four-legged horrors are terrifying enough on their own. This one, however, appeared to have a jet engine strapped to its back. I barely had the time to recognize my folly before my health was shredded and my progress was halted. Safe to say, the run back was deeply humbling in ways that I had never experienced before. On the dawn of day 9, a whole 4 days after beginning my journey, I finally found it. The place that I would call home. Large red trunks stretching to the sky like fingers of the earth, grazing the softness of the clouds. The heavy hum of insects and the humid underbrush, a forest floor rich with all kinds of plants and mushrooms. Even though it was a game, I could feel the buzzing of life that had been so absent from northern biomes, and I won't lie, it made me pause and just appreciate the beauty. After nearly 10,000 blocks of traveling, I finally felt myself called to make the small clearing that I'd found my home. Unpacking my backpacks felt so liberating. Something about finally sorting everything into trunks made the game feel way less hostile and almost homely. Nearby, I trapped some boars for future breeding, much to their disgrace. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't fully enjoy my new home without the much demanded mental suffering of prospecting that Vintage Story imposes. I know in the comments you'll probably leave many different ways that this can be done, but for the life of me, I've struggled with this mechanic for as long as I've played this game, and no guide ever makes it easier. Being a hunter class didn't help either. See, while it's amazing at general survival and traveling, it is absolutely garbage underground and for other late game progression. This is why I installed the mod X Skills, so I didn't forever have to suffer with the slow mining speed and mental instability. But for that to level up, I still needed to struggle with the early penalties. Still, progress was progress, and shockingly, I actually discovered tin on my first attempt, which is rare and amazing for an early Bronze Age start. The problem was, I had forgotten food. In my haste to unpack everything and unburden my pockets, I'd forgotten to re-equip myself with the means of survival. So, what should have been a moment of lucky celebration quickly turned into a desperate race against starvation while my mental stability rapidly deteriorated underground. I was beginning to starve, hearing my own desperate cries distorted as the Rust world clawed for my own. Thankfully, I escaped with just enough sanity and health to survive. Barely. I honestly could not wait until my skills leveled up a little more so we could avoid this in future. The following days became quieter as the overall speed of the beginning days finally faded. I was happy with the progress I had made, and with the construction of a small farm, I felt as though I could really take some time to build a small home. I didn't want a dirt shack, and I'd been actively avoiding it up until this point. This home, honestly, would take so many hours of planning because I couldn't, for the life of me, find the right materials to piece it together on a budget. Everything that I thought looked good realistically would take me hours to make at this stage of the game, and I was unwilling to compromise. The small valley I'd set up in was truly breathtaking, with a small lake and 2 giant redwoods smack dab in the center. I never wanted my cabin to dominate all these natural features because that was initially what drew me to this location. So I ended up keeping the blocks simple and earthy. But this came with many modifications. Sections were built, torn down, and rebuilt with a slightly different style of block. Progress was slow, but that was honestly fine. I was just happy to have something that was beginning to feel like it finally belonged in this world. Vintage Story, unlike Minecraft, has a way of making even the simplest of homes feel meaningful. Every plank, stone, or window is hard-earned and requires a certain amount of time invested before construction. Harder to gather resources, while beautiful, are hoarded like prized materials, sprinkled in sparingly. I mean, come on, how much resources does it take to make dalb? Really? It's so pretty, but it is so difficult. Honestly though, it could be a little bit of the spice that I was given at birth, but I love it. I love that Vintage Story puts so much of an emphasis on slow progress, and it really fits my gaming style quite well. I don't feel like I'm the best builder, but the skills I'm developing feel like the older generations of Minecraft when I first started building. I don't have an extensive understanding of block compositions in this game like I do there, so I find myself struggling more often than not just to find a good palette. But it's very rewarding when something finally works out, especially after hours of planning in a creative world. By the time the first season came to an end, the cottage was finally beginning to feel real. Not complete, but like I could start living in it. For the first time since spawning into this world, I felt like I wasn't merely struggling to survive. And honestly, I think that's a pretty good place to end this episode. I thank you for your time, and I genuinely hope you enjoyed. I'll see you again next week. Bye bye!